Hello Keyforgers and welcome back. It's going to be another deck opening today and we're continuing with our series of a different deck each time, going in chronological order, and we have Age of Ascension today. I know it doesn't quite match our Call of the Archons back drone playmat, but it's a really cool playmat and I wanted to use it. So let's open this deck. This way up, it's green. Toxia Square King, not too sure. And we have Brobnar, Untamed, and Mars. And that is an Archon with 3 arms on one side and 1 big arm on the other. And it's got a nice crown. Let's open it up and see what we get. Closer look at that Archon there. I think that's actually pretty cool. Didn't notice the devil horns the first time around. Anyway, bottom card coming out. Starting with Untamed. We have Inca the Spider, 1 power with poison. Play, reap, stun a creature. Nature's Call is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Return up to 3 creatures to their owner's hands. They're Everywhere is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, deal 2 damage to each enemy flank creature. Deal 1 damage to each enemy creature not on a flank. Save the Pack is an action. Play. Destroy each damaged creature, gain 1 chain. A second, Save the Pack. Rust Nora, 4 power. Fight, destroy an artifact. If that artifact had an amber bonus, you gain that much amber. Persistence Hunting is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, choose a house. Exhaust each enemy creature of the chosen house. Nox, 3 power. It gets plus 3 power for each neighbour it has. Glimmer, 1 power, with an alpha ability. Play, return a card from your discard pile to your hand. A second Glimmer. Full Moon is an action. Play, for the remainder of the turn, gain 1 amber each time you play a creature. Dusk Witch, Omega, and Elusive. Your creatures enter play ready. Very nice Dusk Witch there. On to Mars now. We're starting out with Stim Rager, 4 power, 2 armor, fight, deal 2 damage to a creature and move it to either flank of its controller's battle line. Total Recall is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, for each friendly ready creature, gain 1 amber. Return each friendly creature to your hand. Floexum Spike is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, if there are no friendly creatures in play, destroy each creature not on a flank. Amber Conduction Unit is an artifact. After an enemy creature reaps, if it is the first time a creature has reaped this turn, stun it. Yixel Dominator, 9 power, 1 armor with taunt, and it enters play stunned. We have Beam Buckler, 4 power, 1 armor, play ability. Deal 2 damage to a creature and move it to either flank of its controller's battle line. A second Beam Buckler. Mars Needs Amber is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, each damaged enemy non-Mars creature captures 1 from their own side. A second Mars Needs Amber. Mars First is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, ready and use a friendly Mars creature. Collector Worm, 2 power, 5 armor, fight. Archive the creature Collector Worm fights. If that creature leaves your archives, put it into its owner's hand instead. Agent Human, 2 power with elusive, reap. Choose a friendly non-Mars creature and an enemy non-Mars creature. Stun the chosen creatures. And finally on to Brobnar. We're starting out with Tireless Kraggy. I believe that's not how you say it. 7 power, they cannot reap. You may use it as if it belonged to the active house, and if your opponent has no creatures in play, you have to destroy it. Sound the Horns is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, discard cards from the top of your deck until you either discard a Brobnar creature or run out of cards. If you discarded a Brobnar creature this way, put it into your hand. Lollop the Titanic, 11 power. Lollop the Titanic deals no damage when attacked. A second Lollop the Titanic. We have Groke, 5 power. Fight, your opponent loses 1 amber. Groggins, 8 power. When Groggins is used to fight, it can only attack flank creatures. A second Groggins. Gauntlet of Command is an artifact. Action, ready and fight with a friendly creature. Oh, cards are stuck together here. Gengar Chieftain, 5 power. Play, you may ready and fight with a neighbouring creature. Fozzle, 5 power. Reap, if an enemy creature has been destroyed this turn, gain 1 amber. Coward's End is an action. Play, destroy each undamaged creature, gain 3 chains. And Bingle Bang Bang, 2 power. Before fight, deal 5 damage to each neighbour of the creature Bingle Bang Bang fights. There we go, got there in the end. I do like AOA Brobnar. Let's have a closer look. Let's get straight into the breakdown. We have 9 printed amber in this deck. There are 13 actions, 21 creatures, so a lot of creatures again, 2 artifacts and no upgrades. If we start out with the AERC, we're going to look at the amber control first. We'll start out with Brobnar. We have Groke. Fight ability, your opponent loses 1 amber. Groke must survive the fight for that to happen. And then in Mars, we have 2. Mars needs amber. The action, we get an amber when we play it. And then each damaged enemy, non-Mars creature, captures 1 from their own side. So you will need to damage your opponent's battle line first and then play Mars needs amber. So it's not always a given. Now, those were the only 2 listed amber control cards for this deck. So amber control, pretty low. What I've done, I've pulled out a few other cards that might help. If we look at Mars a bit more, we have the Amber Conduction Unit. It's an artifact. After an enemy creature reaps, if it is the first time a creature has reaped this turn, you stun it. So it's not going to stop the creature reaping that turn, but it does stun it, and it means that your opponent will need to unstun it, costing them a turn, possibly a reaping. It's a stretch for amber control, but I'm stretching on this deck because there's not much in there. We have Ink of the Spider. When you play it or reap with it, you can stun a creature. Again, the same reason, and also Persistence Hunting. You can choose a house and exhaust each enemy creature of the chosen house. If you exhaust them on your turn, your opponent cannot use them because they will not ready until the end of your opponent's turn. So you can prevent some amber generating reaps or actions that their creatures may have. I put Nature's Call in. You can return up to 3 creatures to their owner's hands. That is your creatures and your opponent's creatures. So if we've got good play effects, we can do ours. If you want to stop your opponent from using them next turn, when they're on the board, you can bounce them back to their hand. Works very well if your opponent has been capturing amber onto their creatures because you get that amber back. But it also slows them down because they will have to either play them again. They might not have wanted to play the house if you're returning 3 creatures of the same house, or 1 creature of each of your opponent's houses, which would be very annoying because it does hand lock them a little bit. I put Agent Human in purely because it has a stun ability, but you have to choose a non-Mars creature that is friendly to you and an enemy non-Mars creature and stun both of those creatures. So you do have to stun one of your creatures for the effect to happen to your opponent. And lastly, I put in Collector Worm. 2 power, 5 armor. It's got a fight ability, so it must survive the fight of archive the creature it fights, and that will go into your archives. And then if that creature leaves our archives, it goes back into their owner's hand. So with this deck, we don't really have archive in, so if your opponent's got a pretty tiresome creature that we can fight and the Collector Worm will survive, we can put it in our archives and then never call our archives, so they don't have it for that game. So that's me reaching for a little bit of amber control there. Now usually I would show you cards here from amber control that will go into expected amber, but there weren't any because the amber control was pretty low in this deck. So if we go to expected amber, we have Foozle or Fozzle, I'm pretty sure it's Foozle, 5 power, reap ability. If an enemy creature has been destroyed this turn, gain 1. So you need to destroy a creature by another means on your turn, either fighting with the Brobnar creature or doing some form of direct damage. And then reap with Foozle, you'll gain 1, and then you'll gain an additional 1 if an enemy creature has been destroyed. We have the Gauntlet of Command. Artifact for Brobnar with an action ready and fight with a friendly creature. Again, that can be a house cheat, or you can use it to use a Brobnar creature you have already used this turn. We have those 2 Mars Needs Amber. Again, very situational. Your opponent must have damaged creatures when you play it. They must have amber to put on those damaged creatures, and then you have to be able to take those creatures out for it to be put into your pool. So it's not an easy amber win. We have Mars first. Play, ready and use a friendly Mars creature. Very good action. Again, it does mean that you can use a Mars creature and then use it again. And then we have Total Recall. And I was hoping when I saw this that maybe there was a key abduction in the deck because it works very well. But with this one, for each friendly ready creature, you gain 1 amber. Now we've got 21 creatures in this deck. If we had a battle line, we could play this card, gain amber equal to the number of creatures, and then they get returned to our hand. So usually you'd want to play it and then play the Mars creatures again. Like I said, it works very well key abduction because the cost is lowered by each card you have in your hand. If we move into Untamed, we have Rustnora, 4 power with the fight ability of destroy an artifact. Now, if your opponent does not have artifacts, and you do, you will have to destroy your own because it does not say you may. It just says destroy. So Rustnora is going to eat any artifact that it finds if it fights. If it has an amber bonus, you gain that much amber. If you're facing a Mass Mutation or Dark Tidings deck that's got a lot of enhancements, and your opponent has enhanced amber pips on their artifacts, this works quite well. We have Dusk Witch, 1 power Omega. So when you play it, it's going to end your step. Okay, you will not be able to play any more cards. You will ready, and then it's your opponent's turn. It's got elusive, so if they want to take it out by fighting it, it's going to cost them 2 creatures. And it's got a passive ability of your creatures enter play ready. That is insane. But it's only 1 power, so it is susceptible to direct damage. It's one of those cards where when you play it, it has a huge target on their back. Now Nature's Call, I believe, is just Unexpected Amber because of the amber pip, but with the play effect of return up to 3 creatures to the owner's hands, like I said, if your opponent is capturing amber onto their creatures and you bounce them back to their hand, that amber goes directly into your pool. So I've put it under Expected Amber, but a little bit higher. Also, you can return your own creatures to your hand if they've got good play effects, like we said, and then play them again. And finally, we have Full Moon for Untamed. For the remainder of the turn, gain 1 amber each time you play a creature. Now, there are only 6 creatures in this Untamed house. 2 of those have alpha, which means that they must be played before you play Full Moon, which takes the total down to 4 creatures. The likelihood of you having all 4 in your hand with the Full Moon is highly unlikely, so I don't feel that this is going to generate you that much amber. This deck did have artifact control, and that is the Rustnora. Again, if your opponent does have artifacts on the board, Rustnora does have a big target on their back. If we look at creature control, we have quite a bit. This deck is very good at getting rid of creatures. We have that Coward's End. We saw it in the last deck. It's the action, play, destroy each undamaged creature, and then you gain 3 chains. So if you can't deal damage to your opponent's creatures, they're either elusive or they've got a lot of armor. This is a great way to get them off the board. It is a hefty cost. 3 chains, that's 3 turns, drawing 1 less card. Bingle Bang Bang, 2 power, and it's got a before fight ability. So this happens before the fight happens, so it will always take effect unless you run into a hazardous creature. Deal 5 damage to each neighbour of the creature Bingle Bang Bang fights. If your opponent is protecting those pesky little shadows creatures that are elusive with a taunt, this is a great way of taking them out of play. We have the Gengar Chieftain, 5 power, and when you play it, you may ready and fight with a neighbouring creature. Could be under Expected Amber, because if you go to ready and fight with a neighbouring creature and there's no creatures in play for your opponent, you can reap, but usually you're going to fight. And then we have Tireless Krokag. Now, Tireless Krokag did count as a negative towards your Expected Amber because it cannot reap. But what it can be is it can be used as if it belonged to the active house. So whatever house you call, you will always be able to use it. If your opponent has no creatures in play, you do have to destroy it though. In Mars, we have the Floexum Spike, it's an action, you get an amber. If there are no friendly creatures in play, you can destroy each creature not on a flank. So if for some reason your opponent's managed to clear your side of the board and they've repopulated, you can use this to take them down to 2 creatures, so their flank creatures will survive. We have the Stim Rager, 4 power, 2 armor, with the fight ability of deal 2 damage to a creature and move it to either flank of its controller's battle line. Now, moving creatures in battle lines usually you don't think is a big thing, but occasionally when people have high taunts or high armored creatures, especially Sanctum tend to have quite a few of those, moving a creature's position in a battle line is quite important. And again, we've got the Beam Buckles, which are 4 power, 1 armor, deal 2 damage to a creature, and then move it to either flank of its controller's battle line. So it's the same effect, just on 2 different creatures. One's got a bit more armor. And the Beam Buckles is a play effect, whereas the Stim Ragers is a fight effect. The Amber Conduction unit, after an enemy creature reaps, if it is the first time a creature has reaped this turn, stun it. So it's only going to stun the first creature that your opponent reaps with, but it's still a nice bit of control. We have Agent Human. Again, stun one of your non-Mars creatures to stun one of your enemy's non-Mars creatures. And it's not a may, you will have to do it if you want to reap with them. The Collector Worm's in there, very good control as long as it survives the fight, and it's got that 5 armor. So highly likely, unless it's attacking something huge, can take a creature out of the game for a long time or for the whole game. Now I'm just going to bring back that first card we looked at, Brobnar Coward's End. Destroy each undamaged creature, gain 3 chains. We have Save the Pack in Untamed, we've actually got 2 of them, and that's destroy each damaged creature, gain 1 chain. So we can do either. But just bear in mind that this affects both your battle line and your opponent's battle line. Though Save the Pack is a couple of chains cheaper. We have that everywhere. It's an action. Deal 2 damage to each enemy flank creature and then 1 damage to each enemy creature that's not on a flank. So you will be doing direct damage to your entire opponent's battle line. That could pop wards. It could take down armor. Very nice if your opponent doesn't have a heavily armored or warded battle line, because it sets up really well for Save the Pack. And then Inca the Spider, the 1 power poison creature. When you play it, and then again if you get to reap with it, you can stun a creature, so slowing down your opponent's creatures to either reap, action or fight. And then I put Persistence Hunting in just because I believe stun is underrated and they didn't consider it creature control. Choose a house, exhaust each enemy creature of the chosen house. So it doesn't matter if you share houses with your opponent, it's only the enemy creatures. If we look at some efficiency, it's okay, but the deck does gain chains through Coward's End and those 2 Save the Packs. Total Recall, again, will bounce all creatures back to our hand, which could be a really big problem if we've got a big battle line with creatures from all 3 houses. The other card we do have is Sound the Horns in Brobnar. It's an action. When you play, you discard cards from the top of your deck until you discard either a Brobnar creature or you run out of cards. If you discard a Brobnar creature, you get to put it into your hand. So it's a nice way of cycling your deck. There are quite a lot of Brobnar creatures. We have at least 8 giants in this deck. I know that, so the chances of hitting one if they're not out on the board, very, very good. Recursion. We had the 2 Glimmers. Now they are our 2 alpha cards, like I said. They won't work with that full moon because they have to be the first things that you play on that turn. But when you play them, you can return a card from your discard pile to your hand. So very good for getting the card if you've played it and you need it back. So the Coward's End, Save the Pack. It might be a case of you want Persistence Hunting to stun some creatures. Any card, depending on the situation. And finally, for the disruption, we do have that Nature's Call. So you can kind of handlock your opponent if you return 1 creature of each house if they've got it in play. It means it's going to take them at least 3 turns to play them again, unless they can house cheat them out. There were some cards that didn't fall into any of the categories. Now, we have some big creatures. If we start with Untamed, we've got Nox, gets +3 power for each neighbour it has. So technically, if you put a creature on either side, it's a 9 power creature. We have the Yixel Dominator, 9 power, 1 armor. Taunt, very good for protecting those smaller creatures, maybe your Rust Nora. But it does enter play stunned. But with Taunt, you don't necessarily have to worry about that because it still has a passive effect on the board. We have the 2 Groggins, 8 power giants. When it's used to fight, it can only attack flank creatures, which work quite well with our Beam Buckle and Stim Rager, where we're able to manipulate our opponent's battle line. So if there's a creature you really want to attack with Groggins, if you had a Mars turn before, you can do some forward planning and stick them on the flanks. And then we have Lollop the Titanic. We have 2 of them, 11 power. They deal no damage when they're attacked, so your opponent can tack into them for free because Lollop will not hit back. But if you're attacking, Lollop's going to wallop, done a little rhyme there, for 11 damage. If you're interested in the SAS score, it was 59. They considered it middle of 50% of decks, so an average deck. I think it can be a fun deck to play, especially if you're allowed to maintain a board. With Amber Control, if your opponent has a lot of actions that generate them Amber, then you're really going to struggle because the Amber Control in this deck is not too good. If your opponent relies on generating Amber through Reaping, you can control that board. There's a high possibility you can play the long game and beat them to it. With 9 printed Amber, it's not too bad. Some cards are situational. You might not want to play at certain times, like those Mars needs Amber, but it is one of those decks where you're going to have to think about your future turns whilst playing your current turn. Link in the description if you want to go and check it out. As always, good luck, have fun, and keep forging.